Hey guys, Morgan's Maintenance. Today's tool review is going to be the Wera ZyKlops. Now this is not a new tool, but it is new to me. I've been eyeballing this for quite some time, and when it comes to Wera ZyKlops, there's all sorts of versions. There's some that are just ratchets. There's some that are ratchets that have this flex head like this, or some that have bits in it like this one does. Some that don't, some that take sockets only, some that take sockets and bits. So lots of things out there under Wera ZyKlops, and this one in particular is the 8009 model. It's the one that I've been looking at the most, and I just couldn't pull the trigger on it because of the price, because normal price on this thing is somewhere between $95 and $100. Just depends on kind of which outfit you buy. But they have some that has sockets, some that's tool only, just different things like that. Well, here recently I made a post because Woot had this on sale for $79, which isn't a ton off, but it was a little bit off, and I was back and forth. Do I want to get it? Do I not want to? And when I finally decided, yep, that's the one, I'm going to go ahead and go get it. Sure enough, it was sold out on Woot, and then I couldn't get it. So that made me start looking at other places to see if I could find it somewhere in that same price range. I found one on eBay with a set of Wera torque screwdrivers for $100. I almost pulled the trigger on that, but then I found this one right here, which was bare tool, open box, or actually no box, but it did still have all the bits. Looked pretty new, all those things. I ended up getting this for 50 bucks. And I was like, yes, that's exactly the price point that I was looking for, because I just wanted to try it. And I didn't know if it was something I was going to for sure like, so that $100 was kind of hard to spend. I'm sure I can get $50 of use out of this. And I feel like it's going to have a lot of really good uses. I'm going to show you some of those things here, show you what all you can do with it with some different types of sockets and stuff like that. But there is, in my opinion, one fatal flaw with this that's going to make it not as useful to me as what I hoped it would be. Still going to be a useful tool, but they could have done one thing differently on this, and it would have made it a whole lot better. I'll share that with you as well. Let's go ahead and jump into this thing and see what all it can do, and then you can make the decision if maybe this would be the right tool for you. So before I start adding things to it, putting it to use, those kinds of things like that, let's go ahead and go over the driver itself. So again, I bought mine no box, no anything used, so for all I know, you might get something a little different than mine, or you might buy one of those versions that comes with sockets and get some extra stuff. But as far as the handle itself, I would compare it to the Klein 11-in-1 ratcheting screwdriver in length. Also in kind of the girth aspect of it there. It's a little bit bigger, possibly a little bit longer and a little bit thicker. But overall, I think it's pretty close to that. That's kind of the closest driver that I have to it. Whenever you get into it, this one does have that bit holding. Like I said, some ZyKlops have it, some don't. This one is one that holds bits. You slide that out. I do like how this pulls on out and then wiggles kind of out of the way. That makes it a little bit easier to get those bits in and out if you want to. But I will say this feels a little suspect. And I did have a few people comment and say that they dropped theirs and this ended up breaking or whatever. So it doesn't feel so bad right here. It's whenever you pulled it out that first time, it's a little tight. And then it kind of slings out and you just feel like, oh, I think I went too far with that. But again, time will tell on it. It may be just fine. It just does feel a little bit suspect. And inside of here, you do have 12 bits. I've got some Phillips, some posi drives, some Torx, and some hex. And again, I don't know if these are exactly the ones that you get with it or somebody just filled them back up. I'll try to find the list of if you buy a new one. I'll put it up here if I can find one. But again, that's what I have inside of mine. And again, that snaps in and out pretty easy. It's not too bad. Let me know in the comments below, though, if you've had one of these for a while, how that's holding up for you. I am interested in that. Other than that, the rest of the features are up here on the head. You do have this lock right here, and that is on both sides. So if you're, kind of swapped around one way or the other, you can kind of get to it from both sides. If you operate it on one side, it does operate also on the other, so it's kind of tied together. And up here you have a head that fits in that straight position, or you can pull that down, turn it over. It will lock into place at kind of the 45 or in between 45, but once you hit 45, it kind of locks. Or you can pull it down again and go down to 90 and it locks. And then it also goes back the other way and does the same thing. I don't know why it does that, because it seems like to me you could just go like this and achieve that same result. But nevertheless, that's what it does. And again, you can also put it in between those spots. If like you kind of pull it back, I can get between 45 and 90 and use it. It just doesn't lock into place. So you can still reach any other angle in there. It just only locks at straight 90 and 45. Then we get into the head itself. Let me go ahead and swap it down here so you can get eyeball view. You do have a 1/4 inch bit holder right here, so I can take any kind of bit like this or anything else. It can be longer than this. It fits in magnetically. See if I can get the snap. The snap is really pretty good on this. There it is, locked in there. And again, that does not magnetize your bit though. If I take that screw out there and put that on there, it doesn't pick it up. So that magnet solely locks in your bit, it doesn't magnetize your bit, so you'd still have to use a magnetizer, demagnetizer. But also on this head, you don't only just have a 1/4-inch bit holder, so again, you could take these bits out of here, put them in that, but it also has a 3/8 drive socket up here, so I can take any 3/8 drive socket. Here's a 3/8, slide that on there. This is also held on by magnets, so there's no like ball detent or anything like that. And this was another thing that many people commented and said that they didn't like, and I was curious because I was going at it from the aspect of your sockets are going to fall off, and I don't ever see that happening, but I can tell you what's going to happen is whenever I go to pull this off of whatever it is that I'm driving in, if it's a bolt or a nut or whatever it is, I can see this socket staying on there, and you end up pulling the ratchet out, and then you got to take this on and off. I think that's going to be the downfall of that kind of a system. And then here's my Milwaukee's. These have those square, those flat spots. It's square on this side. I'm not getting full like magnet right there holding on these, versus if I go over here and get like an impact socket that I've got the full round and put that on, that covers completely, so those two magnets are making full contact. I might have a little bit better luck with something like this other than using the square Milwaukee's. But again, I think that this might be also, again, based on what people have told me, I can see this being an issue with leaving your sockets on fasteners and things like that. That's probably what's going to end up happening with that. So that might be something you need to take note of. On the other side, it is a ratchet as well, so you can use it as a ratcheting screwdriver if you want to put it in that straight position, or even a ratcheting angled screwdriver, or you can put your sockets and stuff on it. I'll show that to you in action here in a little bit, but basically you turn it, this little green colored deal back here, one way or the other for counterclockwise and clockwise. This one is the kind where if I turn it clockwise, it's going to allow me to go counterclockwise. If I turn it counterclockwise, it's going to allow me to go clockwise with the fastener. Typical type thing, typically, except for that new Wera screwdriver that I picked up. So that's the way that this one works, but that's pretty much all the features on it. Now let me go ahead and jump in and we'll throw some stuff on it, put it to use. Let me show you some of the things that you could use this for, and then hopefully, again, that helps you make a decision if this is something you need to get. So there's going to be tons of uses for this, in my opinion. Of course, the main thing is it's a ratchet. That's the intent behind it. You basically have that 90 degree right there. If you was to hold it like this, it'd be no different than kind of like a stubby ratchet that you might have. But of course, it also is like a flex head ratchet in that you can get to some different angles and stuff like that. So it's meant to have sockets put on it. So any 3/8 drive socket you have, throw that on there, use it like a ratchet. You can also turn it forward, use it like a screwdriver. Same thing applies with a bit. So you can either use a long bit like this one. That's got a little bit of wobble to it, so you probably wouldn't want to use that all the time. But you can put in that 1-inch bit right there. That doesn't give you, again, any magnetism or anything like that. That screw's not going to pick up. But again, it's a screwdriver. It's also a ratchet, those kinds of things. But what else can you do to it that's kind of weird? That's kind of what we're looking for. Well, one thing would be, if you wanted to take a socket, it was Wacky Wayland actually mentioned this to me, made me think about even trying it. So if I take a 10mm socket, slide this on there, and then I take a bit like this, slide that through, because the hole inside that socket, I can still get down there to that magnetic tip. I can go through there. So if you're somebody who uses one socket all the time and you want to carry it on you and you don't want to store it somewhere else, basically I'd have all these bits. So if I wanted to take this out and put a bit holder, and not only would I have a bit holder where I could put all these bits in that bit holder, but now I've also got some magnetism. I had a screw somewhere. It's over here. Now I've got a magnetic bit. So I can also now go from screwdriver. So if I put that in there, I'm on reverse. So let me go ahead and swap that back. I can put that in, and then now I need to go over to something that is a socket. Of course, this is 9/16, so let me do that to make more sense. So let's say I have a 9/16 on there all the time. Slide that down in there. I can go from screwdriver, take out my bit holder. Now I'm on this lag. That's a little bit tight now. I can't hardly get much turn on it. So if I need more leverage, again, I can swap this lever down, pull that down to 90 degrees. Now I can get a lot more leverage on that, get that put in again and go back to straight. The one thing that is a little bit, I was kind of worried about it. It's not as hard as I expected it to be. But like right now I'm going forward. So if I want to go to reverse, I'm going to have to swap that over. It does turn easier than what I expected it to, but there's still not a lot of surface area to get your hand in there to kind of change that mechanism, especially when it's in this straight position like that. So that's something to take note of. But again, just being able to swap back and forth from socket to bit driver, and ultimately I don't even have to take anything and store it anywhere. It's all right there on the screwdriver. I think that that's a really good idea, and I think this would be something that if you use a socket every single day, the same exact one, and you use bits, I mean, that makes this kind of a lot more valuable in my opinion. Again, that's where it gets up in that $100 range. I think this is kind of a, you know, I want one tool, but it has to be something that's significant for me to buy one for $100. It has to make my job a whole lot easier in some form or fashion, but also being able to, on the fly, change it over to get more leverage. I think that that's pretty sweet with that as well. Of course, some of the limitations on it is that it is only a 3/8 drive for sockets, but you can also get around that as well. So if you've got a, you know, bit adapter like this, put that in there. Now I can use my 1/4" sockets on there. So just because it's a 3/8 drive, you just have to use an adapter of some kind, or you can even get a shorter one like this one here from Wera. It was out of that tool check as well. Put that down in there if you want to be able to get it a little bit closer. And now I can use 1/4" sockets if I want to, or maybe there's a 1/4" socket and a 3/8 socket that I like to use. So I can also put the 10mm on there, and then I don't think this one's going to go and make it, but if I use that longer adapter, I can have that double 10, so that way whenever I lose one of my 10mm, I've still got one down there below. So 2 sockets that I could carry all the time, 1/4", one 3/8, swap back and forth. It's almost kind of like a flip socket in a way, except for you just take one out, use it, put it back in, use the other one. So that way you actually get a combination. You can make your own versus, you know, over here I have an 8 and a 10. Well, maybe I need a 10 and a 12. Well, I can make a 10 and a 12. I can't do anything with this one. This one's stuck at being an 8 and a 10. So that, again, that's another option that you have with it. The other thing that I thought about using another Wera product. This one came out of that tool check from the Advent calendar. Don't be looking at that if you've been watching my shorts. But I can also take and put this in there. Use that as a 1/4" ratchet in that straight fashion. So if I wanted to put a bit in there, I can also now do that and use this as a ratchet. So if I wanted to do that in that way, use it in that way. But then also that would allow you to maybe get in some weird spots, because let's say I need to get back in somewhere and I need to be able to ratchet, because maybe once I get in there with this, so let me put a bit holder just to make that longer to kind of make more sense. So if I was using this ratchet back in somewhere deep and now my fingers are hitting the wall, or maybe it's up in somewhere and my fingers are hitting the ceiling, I can again move this down and maybe be able to pull it out here away from that wall, get to it. Again, just lots of weird options because of the fact that I can put 1/4" stuff in it. I can put sockets in it. I can put it at multiple different angles. If I put something like this in here, it's kind of even flipping it a whole nother dimension in a way. Just really great options with that. So those are all the ways that I thought about using it. Let me go ahead and show you like the flip sockets, because a lot of you are running flip sockets. So if I wanted to use any of my flip sockets in this, all I have to use is that flip socket shaft right there. Slide this one on. There's an 11. Swap it over to the 9. But this is what I was talking about with the magnets, and I think it's going to be the same thing with the sockets. Like if I go to pull something off that, like this is all locked in up here, that's going to always pull out this whole thing. Like I'm going to have to always hold it back here if I don't want to lose this shaft. And I think that's going to be the same case on sockets, because like once I go to pull that off, I think that's going to come off really easy. In fact, I'm going to try the weight of this 3/8 adapter. So this is the 3/8 adapter. And then one of these heavy sockets. Of course, these are impact sockets. You wouldn't have to use these. But I think this is, I mean, this is a really heavy setup right here. Yeah, and see that magnet won't even hold that. That ends up pulling off. So, I mean, it's not going to pull off probably while you're using it, but you'd take a chance of losing that. And I guarantee you that's going to always stay on the fastener, and that's going to end up pulling out. So that's the situation there. If I get out the pass-throughs, which I already have these out, you're going to have to use this adapter. That's the only real way to use your pass-through sockets with this. And you're going to have to use that 1/4" right there. And, of course, that's a kind of wonky setup right there. But for whatever reason, if this is the set that you carry with you all the time, you know, that's a workaround to use your pass-through sockets inside this as well. So that is an option for you to be able to use it. So multiple ways, again, to use it. Multiple angles, multiple things that you can stick into it. I think that's where its value is. But again, I mentioned that to me there is one negative flaw on this for sure. I mean, the magnets might be a negative flaw on the socket itself. I think the bit holder is pretty good, but the sockets, I think that they could have maybe done something a little bit different, maybe a ball D10 over here, but maybe there's not enough room to stick it in there. The only other thing is, again, the fact that that is a little bit, I don't think it's as hard to turn if you're using it in that 90-degree fashion, but if you turn it straight, there's just not much surface there to get onto to turn that to clockwise or counterclockwise. But this right here is also, to me, where the major flaw is on this tool, because there is no fixed position. So like most ratcheting screwdrivers, you've got that spot in the middle where you can lock it in. Well, on a ratchet, you're probably never going to use that. If I'm using sockets, there's never a fixed position at that angle right here. It's always a lefty, you know, loosey, righty-tighty type thing. But whenever I turn it to this position and I'm using a bit holder or whatever it is that I want to put in there, even if it's just a bit, it would be really nice if I didn't have to use it as ratcheting, because right now I'm on loosen. But say I loosen up this screw, but then I want to tighten up my next screw, I've got to come up here and swap that in order to go back. There is no in between where I can now just make this a screwdriver, tighten something, loosen something. I have to use this as a ratcheting screwdriver, and I think to me that's kind of a flaw in this. Again, some people it probably wouldn't matter. I'm not a huge ratcheting screwdriver fan, but I have to use this as a ratcheting screwdriver. There's no in between, so every time I want to go forward and reverse, I'm going to have to stick my thumb up here and swap something around. Now, I do not mind the position of where this one is. It's not too bad when you're in that position, so I don't mind it, but that's just, again, something that I wish they would have put a fixed position on. That's the one downside on the Wera ZyKlop's 8009. So yeah, guys, that is the Wera 8009. Again, a very expensive tool, has lots of really great uses in my opinion, but again, you got to make the decision of, yes, some of those things that you just showed me are exactly what I do day in and day out, so $100 is nothing to me to be able to do that with it. Or you might say there's no way that I could get $100 of use out of that. So that's the way it is with every tool. Some are really expensive to some people, but to some people, the amount of use that you can get out of it, the way that it's going to help you be more efficient, those kinds of things, it's worth whatever it costs. So again, I think this is one of those kind of tools. I think it's either a really good fit for you or it's not a good fit at all because of the price point. But let me know down in the comments below if you've been running this for quite some time, what you think about it, if there's things that you'd rather have instead of this, or if you bought something else that you feel like works better than this as well. Drop that in the comments below. But as always, I hope this video was helpful. You guys stay safe. Have a blessed day. I'll see you on the next video.